Hey everybody, I'm reading a book called How to Read a Book, and I wanted to start giving quick snippets on what I'm learning in these books so that if you don't like reading books, you can glean all the information from them and you don't have to read books. I would encourage you to start reading books, but a lot of people don't like to, so you can just watch videos and I'll give you the best points. So I'm reading a book called How to Read a Book, and one of the issues that most people have, myself included, is I've always read every single book the exact same way. I just pick it up and I start reading it. And the author talks about how there's like so many flaws, how lots of different books have to be read in different ways at different speeds because some books, maybe you don't want to read as in depth as other books, right? You just want to like glean like general information from it. You don't want to spend tons and tons of time. But then there's like things, books or documents like the Constitution, for example, where if you read it in 10 minutes, like you're never going to gain any information from it. Like really you should actually read like a paragraph and then like dwell on it for like days or even research each paragraph after you've read it or something like that. So there's totally different ways to read different types of books and documents and things. The best way though to read like general books that most people want to read is first do like an inspection of the book. So the first thing to do is like, look at the chapters, see if it's like generally, because the chapters, I never really like look at the chapters before, but like really look at the chapters, think about the title, the chapters, like is this a book you want to invest time into? And if you want to find out a little bit more about it, that's when you do like, it's called an inspectional reading, and you literally like inspect the book. So you do like read the prologue, the epilogue, and then like really skim the book. So basically read the entire book in an hour. And it's called intensive reading, and you can't really do this type of reading, like inspectional reading, trying to figure out exactly what the book is all about if you don't really pay attention. And a lot of people have a hard time paying attention when they're like reading books and like their minds wander and stuff like that. But if you're consciously trying to figure out what this book is generally all about, it kind of forces you to focus. And so there's a lot of books out there that if after you do that inspectional reading, you're like, hey, I don't want to invest another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours into this book, and you just saved yourself a bunch of time and frustration, right? You gleaned a bunch of information. Now you know like 20% of what the book's about, and it's better to know 20%. They get frustrated and then put it down and then not read another book for a really long time. So do an inspectional reading of every single book. And a really great example is that high school students hate reading Shakespeare. Why? Because when you're given the assignment of reading Shakespeare, and this is true for me and probably true for every single person listening, is the teacher said, okay, you're going to read the first, act, and then I want you to look up all the different words that you don't know and do all these different things and try to understand and write a synopsis. But it's like and the person says this in the book, the very first assignment should be to just quickly read the entire story and get a general idea of what the story is about. And then that way you can come into class the next day and then everybody can have a conversation about, okay, what was this story about? What did you kind of glean from like your first initial reading? Because you can't really analyze a book and really get everything out of it or a story if you don't really know what the story is about, right? Unless you're reading like a fictional story and you don't want to know the ending until the ending, right? And it's just for pure joy. But if you're ever trying to learn something, like what you're trying to do is really like learn the information. And the best way to do that is to like get like a real quick like understanding, like quick hour. And then that way, once you start reading, then you really kind of like grasp like where the story's going, like what they're going to end up talking about. And you know that you're actually interested in finding like where they're going to go with this information. So do an inspectional reading, basically an hour. You read the whole book in an hour, and that will tell you whether or not you want to invest the time. And then you do a superficial reading. So this is where, and this is like probably my biggest problem in the past with reading books, is you just start reading and you don't stop. And I'm not saying like you can't stop like ever, like you read until you're done reading, but I'm saying you don't have to like read the entire book in one go. You just, as you read, you don't stop and like try to figure out things you don't understand. You just keep reading. You don't stop at points you don't understand. You don't stop at words you don't understand. You just keep reading. Because if you stop every time you don't understand a word, you don't understand a point, or you don't understand like a paragraph or a thought or whatever, you, if the book's over your head, which most books are over people's heads, because otherwise you wouldn't be reading them, especially if you're wanting to learn about a subject, a lot of the points are probably over your head. I know that's true for me. And I'll get wrapped up in like one thought and then I'll never make it past like chapter 2 or 3. Right. And instead of doing that, just read the whole book like straight through, because it's better to learn 50% of a book and walk away with the knowledge of 50% of that book than to stop at chapter 2, get all confused, and never really understand what the book's like totally about. So read it all the way through. And then once you read it all the way through, you might have skipped some ideas, but now you have a pretty solid understanding and grasp of what this book is actually about. And then if you really want to invest time into it, then you start all over, and that's when like you really read the book thoroughly. And because you know where the book is going and the points that the author's trying to make, if you read it that last time, that's where you can really be like, okay, I didn't understand this before, but I kind of see where like maybe he's trying to go with this, and then you can really start to like form thoughts and like really like get things to like click in your mind. And so I mean, that totally makes more sense on how to read a book, right? Because every book isn't going to be worthwhile to read for you. Some things, you could have the same book that's worthwhile to read for you and not for somebody else. So, quick once over, like maybe 5-10 minutes, just to make sure that the book is something that you're, open to reading. You could even do it in like 2 minutes, just, title, chapters, read the back cover, and then do an inspectional reading for an hour, and then do a quick read, where it's like, it's not really quick, but you're just like reading and you don't stop. You just like read all the way through and you don't get frustrated if you don't understand everything the very first time. If it's a difficult book, it wouldn't make sense that you would understand everything the very first time. And that totally, like, once that pressure like comes off of you, then it's like you can just enjoy the book, right? Because you're not like, oh man, I'm stupid or I'm dumb or I don't get this, and like, oh, this is so annoying. It's just like skip the point and move on, because there's plenty of other golden nuggets in the book that you can glean. So why get wrapped up on this one point when there's 100 other points in the book, as long as you just keep on going, you know? So, and maybe later on in the book, they'll say the same thing in a different way, and then you'll come back later and be like, oh, that's what they were trying to say, but you just never get past that point because you're so frustrated. And then if after that, kind of quick read, you really want to like go and learn about it, then you read it that one last time, maybe give it like a month or two, and then read it again, and then you like really process the information and you really challenge yourself to like learn everything. So that is how you should read a book. And this is only like chapter 5, so there's like more to this. So I'll do like a part 2, part 3, or whatever needs to be done on this book. But I mean, that information alone, I think, is like gold, right? Like, if you've never read books, which I don't really read books, I like listening to podcasts, I like watching like YouTube videos and stuff like that. But how does no teacher in America teach how to read a book? Like, this book should be required reading day 1 of high school. Day 1. It's astounding that it's not. So now you know. Until next time, stay safe, live free. Now you know how to read a book. And I'll catch you later. Bye.